I'm going to walk you through building a poster in Photoshop. That way you can pause it and move at your own pace. So first thing I do is I go into my staff folders, and I go to my staff folder, and then I got my quest work in there, and I'm going to make a new folder for this one poster. So Photoshop poster practice. And all the material I'm going to use on that poster goes in here. Now I'm going to show you how to search Google stuff, but I actually already found a couple of pictures that I shot that I'm going to use. But we are going to look at Google real quick to see best ways to search for images that are high enough resolution for what you want. So crowds. I prefer to use my own stuff if I can, because that's more like, like legal. So with this, I did a crowd search images, and I'm going to tools and size larger than 4 megapixels. 4 megapixels still isn't that big, but you can be fairly safe in stretching a 4 megapixel image across an entire an 8.5 by 11 inch page. So this one looks okay. I'm going to right click on it and save image as, and I'm going to throw it right into my folder that I just made, Photoshop poster practice. Crowd pick small. And let's just double check that, see what size it is. If you look at it over here, 2535 by 1635. That's reasonably sized. Seems like it's not as big as it said it was, but oh no, it's exactly right. Okay, so I've got images there, and you can do that process for as many images as you want. For me, I'm going to keep it simple in just one picture. Now our next stop is to go into Photoshop. I'm going to bring up my dock here. So Photoshop. I'll just keep this kind of in a, well, let's make this full page so we can see everything. So Photoshop, I'm going to File, New. And then you get a bunch of things, choices. We're going to pick a print size, and we're going to make it letter size, because that's the size of the paper that we have. Then you can either make it upright, like a portrait orientation, or landscape orientation, where it's longer, the long edges side to side rather than up and down. And I'm going to make it landscape because that's what my picture is, so I don't have to crop it too much. So create. Now, if I go back to my folder of stuff that I've got these 3 crowd pictures. This one's wider, but I feel like this one's going to actually work better for what I want to do. So I'm going to just drag that onto this image. What I've done is this is my paper, so I know that that's the boundaries of what I can actually print. So now I've got this image as a layer in there, and I can resize it. Depending on what version of Photoshop you use, you may need to hold down Shift while you're resizing to make sure that you don't stretch it in weird ways. I'm using the newest version of Photoshop, which actually switches that backwards. So holding down Shift allows you to skew it, whereas it just defaults to keeping the proportions locked. So that looks pretty good to me. It's going to be a full page thing. Yeah. I'm doing this because our theme is Sonder, and I think that actually works in cool ways with crowds, because you're like, oh my god, there's people, and they have lives too. So there's just going to be a little thing in there that goes with it. So Finesse, I'm going to open up the hand-drawn poster assignment, because that's got the details for all the posters. There we go. So I'll refer to this as I go. So I need to make some text boxes. Over here on the right side is our layers panel, and you may see it, and it may look different to you. You've got over with Windows, the workspace. You have various kind of workspaces. I tend to work in photography. Actually, most of the time when I got my big monitor, I made one called 4K display, which has, these are the things that I use the most often: brushes panel, layers panel, that kind of thing. We're not going to really working with actions and brushes and stuff, so let's go back to photography. If you've been working in a certain workspace and then everything looks wrong, you go back to the workspace here, and you hit reset photography or whatever, and it brings you back to the defaults of photography. And you can resize your windows just by grabbing the sides here and moving around. So that's pretty nice. I can see my layers. I got a background layer, that's the white. I've got my image layer. You can click these little eyeballs to make them disappear. Just like InDesign, move layers on top of each other to cover what's going on. So the text tool is right over here. It's got a T. It's also, if you hover over it, it tells you that the keyboard shortcut is T. So I'm going to put in a box that says Sonder. And then I'm going to put in another box. I just clicked away, and I'm going to put in another box, and I'm going to copy and paste the definition of Sonder right in there. I like to copy and paste whenever I can because then I don't screw it up. And I'm not worrying about font size right now. I'm just getting the information on the page that I need. Now I can pretty much guarantee that that's too long across. Whenever I have that issue, I can just click back into it. You just hit enter. And you know what? I lied. I can't stand it. It's too big. I'm going to shrink the font size. Over here is font size, and it's at 24 right now. I'm going to drop that down to 14. Remember that you sort of size things depending on what's catching attention and what's just extra information. So right now I've got this, if you watch my mouse over here, I've got alignment options. I can align it to the left, I can align it to the right, I can center it. I'm going to do this one to the left because my Sonder's over there on the left. I may change that later on. You know what? Since this is Disney World and everybody knows this is Disney World, let me see if I've got my Walt Disney font. Sometimes I go to, I used to have one. I got a new Mac and I'm not sure if I, nope, I don't. Well, let's get it. So I got Google here. Go to dafont.com. This is good to know if you ever want fonts. Dafont's got lots of fonts. That's where Dafonts are. Get it? Okay. And then I can search Disney. Look at that Waltograph. That's the one I like. So I download it. Then I open the zip file. And yeah, there's the stuff. The TTF and the OTF are the actual font files. You just double click on them, install font. That worked. Yours, if you're doing it on one of the school Macs, it'll probably ask you for a password, which I'll have to supply, but that's okay. All right, so those fonts are installed now. The font is awesome, and thinking about fonts is kind of a good idea in Finesse. So I'll go back to my go back to my text tool, select my stuff, go to the font. I start to type in Waltograph regular. Okay. Now you can resize the font by doing a direct number, or if you use the move tool over here, which is also selected by hitting V, make sure that show transform controls is checked off. That way you can get these little grabbing boxes there. And then you just grab it by the corner and you can resize it. Okay. And we'll bring that down. Okay. Sometimes if I want to really align something, I can grab the ruler over here. You just grab it from there, and there we go. We got a little blue line. There's a little bit of a delay. I'm not sure what's going on with my computer. It doesn't like the video going. But that lines up, and then I've got my Sonder box. I can just move that over so that those go together. Maybe I'm using the arrow keys to move it like 1 pixel at a time. So for precise adjustments, I like to do that. Once I've used my ruler, I tend to just get rid of it. Now I've got these 2 layers. If I want, I can group those layers together by shift-clicking the 2 layers. So now they're both highlighted, and I hit Command-G to group. And let's just call that Sonder. The advantage of that is, one is that I have fewer things to look at. If I want to get into my Sonder, I can just open it up. The other one is that now I can move as a unit this anywhere I want it to be. So Sonder, the realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own. And now I'm going to make a new layer. This is your new layer button down here. You can also go up to the top and hit layer, new layer. The only time I use that version is when I want to do like an overlay or something I'm going to fill with a neutral color. So I'm going to make this a painting layer. I'm just going to draw something. Oh, and I unplugged my tablet. Give me a sec. I want to draw. Okay. In a second, I should get that back. Just gotta register. So I'm gonna use my paintbrush. That's this one. The B button gets that up. Let's load the brushes. Window, brushes. All right. I'm gonna use just a hard, round, pressure size brush. I'm not a great drawer. I'm not even a passable drawer. I am using my brush tablet. So I'm going to zoom in. Command Option 0 will bring you straight to a full screen kind of thing. I like this kid's expression, so I'm going to use him. Just this little thing. I'm going to make a little thought bubble. Oops, but not in black. Use white. Make sure my opacity is set to 100%. Thought, thought, thought. And then here's the big one. Good enough. Okay, so I have that layer. I'm going to title that layer Bubble, just so that when I'm working on the thing, I can get back into it and see what I've got. I just double-clicked on it and then typed it in. I'm going to make a type, and I'm going to do it inside this. That's very large, and I don't want Walter Graph. Oh, let's do Baskerville. It's nice. Baskerville regular should be just fine. And then we'll make it a nice small, it's 10-point font. Yeah. All he's going to say is whoa. And let's change the color of the font over here, this white box. Bring that up. You can use the eyedropper to pick it, to grab a color. First I have to actually select the text that I wrote. There we go. So you can grab a color there, see how it changed the whoa. Or you can just drag around in here. I just want black, because black is fine. Now I'm going to go back to I'm going to say, yeah, that's good. I'm going to go back to my move tool and move the whoa into the thought bubble. Now if I hit Command 0, brings me back to full screen, and I can see my little thought bubble there. And you know what? I wonder if that's, now that I'm zoomed out, that seems like an awfully big whoa. Let's make that smaller. 10-point. There we go. 8-point. And remember, depending on the size of the screen you're using, things may seem too large or too small, but you have to think about the fact that you're making an 8.5 by 11-inch print. And when you're doing MLA formatting, that's 12-point Times New Roman font. So if you're looking at 12 and you're like, oh, that's way too small, it's actually really not. 12 is fine. 8 is genuinely small, but I kind of want it small because that's sort of symbolic of the idea that we're like this one small little mote in the galaxy and everybody is just as important as you are. Okay, so what else needs to go in here? Back to the requirements. I actually like to check things. So the due date, finesse. We need something about finesse. So I go back to my type tool and finesse. That is, let's make it white again. And so, like I said before, you can either resize by changing the size of the font directly in the font window, or you can just grab the box. I'm going to stick that right over here. And I'm not going to finish this poster. You guys know about all the details that you need to put into it. I'm just showing you some of the stuff that you can do while you're working on in your process here. So that's, I like to keep things big, or at least if something's going to be big, I want it to be big, and if it's going to be small, I want it to be small. Making real choices, kind of not because it just happened that way, but because that's kind of what you decided. So I also want people to know what finesse is, so I'm making a new text window, and it always defaults to a similar font to what you used before. So the last time I specifically selected a font size was 8-point, so it keeps going back to that. ACHS Literary Magazine. And I don't make boxes for the, you can with the text tool drag a box and fill it, but I prefer to just click and then make it go, and then I can kind of resize it from there. I find I get confused when I do anything other than that. So now I'm going to manually resize this. And with the snap, if you go to view, snap, what it'll do is it looks for like relationships between your layers and will snap them into place when you get close. So when that little purple line came up, it said, oh, that's the top of the finesse thing. So that kind of helps you line things up. I wonder whether I want to make that italic. Regular, semi-bold italic. Just say right, italic. Okay. And then maybe we'll resize that a little bit more. I'm not entirely sure where the top of that is visually, so I'm going to drag this ruler down. Okay, and because for some reason it's disappearing when I'm making the video. There we go. That's pretty close. Yeah, ACHS Literary Magazine. If your rulers are not showing up, go to View, Rulers, and then they show up. Okay, so I've got those guys. Let's group some things up. The bubble and the woe go together. So we'll just call that woe bubble. Woe bubble. And then the finesse and literary magazine, those also go together. So I'm Command G to make the group. Again, that's Command G. Finesse. And I really do think it's good to name your layers so that you know what it is you're doing. Now let's take that finesse and we're going to apply some effects to it, because it's a little bit hard to see right now. So I'm going to put a drop shadow on because it's white on kind of a darker thing. So with the drop shadow here, you should be able to, let's see, we're going to increase the opacity of the shadow more than I want it, just so that I can see the effects that I'm doing. Then I'll turn it back down again. Generally, you don't want to make a drop shadow too intense, because then it looks really fake. That seems like a good size for it. And now I'm going to drop that opacity back down. And I'm just doing it to make it stand out a little bit without people. The idea is that the text stands out, but people don't look at it and be like, oh, what did you do? You can do other things too. You can get in there and do a stroke. See, I put that nice big thick black stroke on the words. That's now too thick. You can't even see the words. So like a 3 or 4 pixel stroke kind of looks okay on the finesse part, but not on the ACHS Literary Magazine because that's so much smaller. So I'm going to take the stroke off. If I do want to apply a stroke to finesse itself, which I might, then I would just open up the group, select the finesse layer, type tool, just the word finesse, and it should now, oh wait, no, I'll have to do a select the layer. JK. So finesse, effects, stroke. And then I can do, yeah, I like it. A little bit of a stroke there. But it left the ACHS Literary Magazine part alone. When I'm done, I save. I save it as a PSD file. That's going to keep all the layers. Once you're ready to print it, it's easier to export it or save it as a JPEG. So you save the PSD and the JPEG. The PSD is to allow you to edit it. The JPEG is for printing and sharing with other people. And we'll call that Poster Practice 2. So, and then I can just, maximize compatibility. There's some other things that you should be aware of with layers. You can affect, if you select a layer and then you go to the opacity, you can, it makes things kind of transparent. There's also various blend modes you can go through which will adjust how layers interact with each other. So this still needs details. It needs who you can get the stuff to, when the stuff is due, what it is that we're looking for, all the standard stuff that goes into our posters that we've already done in previous posters. But that's just a work through the basics of layers and how they work and putting together a simple poster. In further exercises we'll get fancier, but for now keep it simple, keep it clean, keep it nice. All right, see ya.